Today, I'm really excited to welcome our guest, Steve Biddulph. Steve Biddulph is one of the world's best known parent educators. We know there are some physiological differences and some fundamental differences between boys and girls. But at the same time, how do we stop using that to perpetuate gender stereotypes, right? How
Yes,
do we bridge
yes.
that gap between understanding and accepting differences on one hand, but not using it to, to
To entrench the
build
things.
or
Yeah,
uh,
yes.
on the other.
Let's talk about culture now. That's so important. And can I tell you just a really short story about my father, Nalina?
Yes, please.
When my dad died about 15 years ago, and I spent the last week of his life in the hospital with him and being with him because the time was precious. And in one day he told me a story about my childhood that I didn't know, which was that when I was 4 days old, we'd be home from the hospital and just got back to our home in Yorkshire, a little fishing town in Yorkshire. And my dad noticed that my mum was very tired. And so he thought, I'll take the baby out for a walk. And he put me in the pram, this big old fashioned English prams that they used to have. And he started off down the street and he went round the corner into the shopping area, the high street. And this was in 1953. And as he got into the high street, he noticed people looking at him and frowning. And there was people looking quite like they had cross expressions on their faces. And then a little bit further along, some street urchins, the little street kids, started to run behind him. And they were calling out to him, sort of calling out insults to him. And as my dad was telling me this, he's in a hospital bed with a morphine drip, and he closed his eyes, and I thought, perhaps he's just going to go to sleep again. Is he all right? But I wasn't sure. I said, Dad, what were they calling out? And he said, they were calling out, your dad is your mum. And he looked a little bit teary, and he's because he's a shy man, he just went down a side street and took a shortcut and gave up and went home. And my dad knew that I'd sold 4 million books on fatherhood, and he knew what I did for a job, and this was one of the last conversations we ever had. And I thought why is he telling me this? I think it's to say, look, us dads of the 1950s, we wanted to be hands-on fathers. We wanted to love our children and to be tender and to play an active role. But the culture didn't allow that. It went against the norms of our time. And I just had this great ocean of feeling of generations of young dads, you know the feeling, dads who are watching this. So your baby is born, your heart just opens, and you want to do everything for them. But for centuries, the culture said, no, you go out and earn the money. You stay a distance. This is, it's not your job. And I think that's not the human way. That's not the deep pattern of human beings. Dads are, in the indigenous societies, very tender with children, very engaged. And we have to get back to that. And so saying that the dad who shares parenthood is close and affectionate with his children, their boys will be affectionate, and their daughters will feel valued and worthwhile because they feel like, my dad loves me and I'm in no doubt of his love. And so the self-esteem that comes with that. So we can talk a lot more about the specifics of what to do, if you like, but that's kind of a heart reason to make the change, help the change. And today in Australia, and I'm sure in India, you don't even blink to see a dad pushing a stroller. We've changed that. That we've had a revolution, and it just has to keep rolling on. Yeah.
We talk about, how do we get boys to open up, express what they feel, give them opportunities to, to be more expressive in how they are, in a positive way to.
Yes. I think the thing first of all is to realize that, of course, that they start out very open-hearted. The little children of both sexes are very open-hearted, and their feelings are right there on the surface. And so it's more a question of how do we not squash that? And so I often give an example of a family who live on a busy street, and they have a pet dog, and the little boy loves this dog. It's his companion. And then one day they hear a screeching of tires outside, and they go out, and the dog has been run over by a car, and it's just lying there. And the little boy, maybe he's only 4 years old, and his dad is right beside him. And if the dad had been in our country, often, say, for instance, a war veteran, a soldier who'd seen a lot of death and loss, then when this little boy starts to cry or starts to look sad, the dad feels the sadness in his own body. But if he lets the sadness come into his own body, he might think he's just going to completely break down. So he's afraid of his own grief. And so he might, shout at the boy or say something very dismissive, like, it's only a dog, what are you worried about? We'll get you another, or whatever it is. But today's dad, much more likely to sort of, get crouched down beside the boy and just put an arm around him and say, look, oh, that is so sad. You loved, Jessie, whatever the dog's name is. And this is just really sad. And let's see what we can do, and carry the dog inside, and just, allow the sadness to be there. And the little boy just folds into his daddy's arms and cries. And the daddy's saying, that's okay. You're a beautiful boy. Of course you love that beautiful dog. And so by making the space for the sadness, the boy is learning. The boy will have many griefs in his lifetime, but he's getting the foundation, like, this can be borne. It's bearable. Someone is there for you. And not only that, but a man is there for you. And he's like me. And he's, because little boys, they just think that, especially between about 6 and 14, they think their father is the most amazing human being. They think he's Superman. They want to be like him. And so this is a chance where dads show their sons how to treat women with respect, how to solve difficulties with good humor, and to never not shout and never ever hit anybody. And so the boys are like looking up at their daddy, and so it's a combination of the women teaching the boys and the fathers teaching the boys too. We have a stages thing which I sometimes draw, which is that the stages of boyhood. This is very rough. That from 0 to 6, boys are very much in their mum's world. Dads can do a huge amount, and dads who do change nappies and bath babies, very good for prediction of a family that will succeed and a marriage that will succeed. But mums are still primary from 0 to 6 usually, but some families can reverse that. But then at the age of 6, little boys seem to move over to dad, and they suddenly want to follow their dads around. And so that's the kind of primary window for fathering. And then at 14, there's that testosterone burst that we talked about. And so we need to also have uncles and good school teachers and people that give them perhaps other ways of masculinity. Your boy might be very artistic, and the dad is not at all artistic. The boy might be sporting, and the dad might be, a mathematician. You can't be everything to your children. And so those 3 stages of boyhood are quite good to have in mind. And especially in my work, we're kind of wanting to prompt fathers and say, this is your job, and dads sometimes just didn't know what their job was. They thought, it was to pay for everything, the English dad in the British, in the UK, like to be a walking wallet, someone who shows up and provides the cash. And that was terrible, like a straitjacket.
Even today in India, for example, all the housework chores, if there's anything to be done, it's always though women are empowered and is going to work and has a career, everything, when she comes back home, she still takes on the major responsibility of the raising the children and the household chores. And it's also part because, as the boys are growing up and girls are growing up, we tend to, what I've seen, or the way in my own experience itself, it's always the girl who said, why don't you come help clean up? Or why don't you do this? Whereas boys are allowed to go and watch TV, whereas the girls expected to chip in with housework, right? So your thoughts on that, on how why it's important in today's world to get boys, also teach them those skills as well.
Yes. Well, no surprises here, Nalina. I'm sure you're as clear about this as I am. But when I look back on the impact of my Raising Boys book, I think many of the messages were deep messages, heart messages, but there was one that was very concrete, and it was that a boy has to learn to cook. And we set a rule. There's that at the age of 9 is when a boy's attention span, his ability to concentrate, when we joke about this, we say it overtakes the attention span of a border collie, of a sheepdog, and so from 9 onwards, we say that a boy should cook an evening meal once a week for the whole family. And you start off with simple things, with noodles and things that come in packets and things, but the aim is that from 9 onwards he can cook dinner for the family, and so you teach him, this is boiling water and it's dangerous, and this is sharp knives and they're dangerous, and if we don't do this, then we can't complain if we produce a man who just is a slob. And when I put this onto the Facebook community, the people gave me lists. So having a tidy bedroom, taking out your own laundry out to the washing machine, doing your own laundry, cleaning up after a meal, vacuuming the house or mopping the floors, have jobs, share them out with everybody, and move them about, and that your aim is that if your young man was on his own in a strange city with no one else, he was absolutely capable of doing everything. Otherwise, he'll just marry the first woman who comes along because he hasn't eaten for a week. I'm just joking, but you see what I mean? You produce a disabled human being. And so this is where I think, and I never say to women, this is what you should do, because it's not my part, but you can see the benefits of this in having a son who absolutely pulls his weight. And some of people watching will have 4 or 5 children, and your load could be much lighter. This is working feminism in the home. It really does start with us.